Jing, a 15-year-old girl, looked at her 10 siblings and knew this was not the future she wanted for herself. She wanted something more. So when the recruiter approached her, she decided to take a chance to learn new skills and make a lot more money than she ever would in China. The recruiter did say there were costs involved in getting a job, like airfare, broker fees, to name a few. But she would be able to pay them off so quickly with all the money she was going to earn. So she boldly asked her parents to put their home and harvest deals as collateral and bravely left China to live out her dream. Her dream to one day own a women's clothing store. When she arrived in Japan, to a room shared with 14 ladies, working 12 to 14 hours a day, making clothes for one of Japan's major clothing brands, to the wages that were garnered to pay down her debt prior to arrival, and the growing debt for food and lodging her brokers and owners added every day. She saw no end to paying down this debt. With threat of deportation and to her life if she were to complain about this working or living condition, she knew this is not what she signed up for. How often do we ask ourselves, the food I eat, the clothes I wear, the electronics and other goods that I consume every day end up in my hands? How about the buildings that I live in, where I go for sporting events or entertainment, get built? Or the person who's serving me at restaurants, nail salons, hotels. How did that person get here? From the raw materials to the final product to the services we receive, there are hands that labor over these things so that you and I can enjoy the life that we love and that come to believe we need. We are fueling the cycle of exploitation called human trafficking, the modern-day slavery, with our innocent, unaware lifestyle choices. The choices you make at grocery stores every few days, at clothing stores every season, at restaurants every time you go out, or by creating demand for sporting events like World Cup and the Olympics. I came to learn about human trafficking on one rainy, bored afternoon when I stumbled upon a movie called Human Trafficking on TV. As the movie unfolded, women and girls with grand dreams and hopes were lured and then exploited in the sex industries. Feeling moved by what I had seen, I did more research and found out that Korean women were victims of sex trafficking in the sex industries of Korea, Japan, and the United States. This altered the course of my life for me because I am a Korean American woman, a proud immigrant who has lived out the hopes and dreams of mine and my parents. To know that there were women who looked like me, who also had hopes and dreams of their own when they left Korea, but were instead exploited in this way. I just simply couldn't believe it. So since that day, I have committed to fighting against trafficking at every sector, from civil society to government to business. The anti-trafficking movement at large has become more sophisticated since that movie came out in our understanding of the crime, the extent and depth of exploitation, and victim profile. We expanded our understanding of the crime from just sex to labor. So of the 40.3 million people enslaved today, 16 million people are exploited in the private sector economy. Now compare that number to the 12.5 million people who are enslaved in the entirety of the African slave trade in the New World. We learned that crime is not just isolated to few countries, but actually all around the world, in my country, in your country, in many different forms, but painfully similar as human exploitations can be. We learned that victims are not only women and girls, but men and boys as well. And that they're not some helpless people lacking will and power, but rather those who are adventurous, who have a burning desire to see a world beyond theirs. They are enchanted by promises of better future. They leave their home and what they know to care for their families. They are bold and brave, like my parents when they left Korea. The traffickers are those who prey on those hopes and dreams, the desperation and innocence of people, like Jing, whom I mentioned earlier. They choose cheap labor over human dignity. They take advantage of the fact that there are lack of regulations and enforcement, the corruption of governments. They know that as long as there are fire exits for the labor inspectors to check off on their inspections list, or that even if the fishermen are starved, trapped, and beaten, as long as dolphins are not caught and harmed by the tuna nets, not many people will be asking questions about how their labor force is being treated. And then enter you and me, fueling this cycle of exploitation with our innocent lifestyle choices because we have created and live in a consumerist culture. We want our food and products fast and cheap. We want to be entertained. We want convenience. We want the best and the latest all the time. This is how we live our lives. When I met Jing, 3 years had passed since she defied the pleas of other workers to just stay quiet, pay down your debt, and just move on. But instead, she ran away, hiding from her traffickers from one place to another, to standing before the court to plead her case, and then finally being free. 3 years. I asked her, would you do this again? To work in a foreign country at a clothing factory? She looked at me with a quizzical look and said, of course. My heart dropped. She proceeded to say she was just unlucky, and that the factory owners were mean people, and that if people knew what they were doing, people would not be buying clothes from them. She sounded so confident. You see, I am not an emotional person, and I think my family and friends will vouch for that. It takes a considerable amount of steeling yourself to be able to work in this field, to see human dignity get trampled in unspeakable ways, and still find faith in humanity. I cried when she said those words, because I am that people who allow the owners to treat Jing and millions of others this way. And what I didn't know then, but I know now, why she would do it again. Because her hopes and dreams of owning a women's clothing store hadn't changed. She may be a victim of trafficking by circumstance, but she is a survivor by heart and nature. If I see her again, I want to say I am sorry for thinking she was just so naive. What I had failed to see then is that I am just like her, and that I too would take the risk again for my hopes and dreams. We need to recognize that we are trampling on the hopes and dreams of people like Jing, like you and me. We need to evaluate our lifestyles and ask questions that could end modern-day slavery. Businesses and industries should ask questions like, how did the raw materials end up in my production line? What hands touched the raw materials? What hands made the final goods? What hands are providing services in my place of business? And are these hands being properly treated? We as consumers should ask questions about the goods and the services that we use and receive. Now, this isn't a call to boycott. In fact, when businesses have started to look into issues of trafficking in their supply chain in response to consumer pressure or simply to do the right thing, people, us, media, have pounced at them for having this prevalent problem. That's not how we move forward. When we boycott, when the orders don't come in, when production stops, people like Jing are most impacted. I believe we have a responsibility to create an alternate livelihood before we end their current one. Instead, we should invite businesses, organizations, industries, and sectors to be part of this journey with us, demanding of high standards for every set of hands that are part of their supply chain by showing our loyalty to the brands that are willing to be transparent, committing to be change of agents. The fact is, I have been there and I have seen a culture shift when we as businesses and industries, we as citizens have asked these questions. Governments have enacted anti-trafficking laws and made efforts to implement them in their legal and law enforcement systems. Civil society campaigned and protected victims of trafficking. Consumers bought certain brands over another. And businesses have enlisted the help of trafficking experts to evaluate their supply chain for the prevalence of trafficking, and then shifting their business model to create a culture that respects human dignity, a culture that celebrates hopes and dreams of every single set of hand that's part of their supply chain. It's easy to sit here and dismiss our impact in modern-day slavery. I, for one, lead a very simple life and often buy fair trade goods. I challenge you, me, us. That's not enough. The choices we make at grocery stores, at clothing stores, they can be powerful. For example, if we were given the choice of peeled jumbo shrimp from Asia, where slavery is very prevalent, for $20, and another brand's ethically sourced, smaller, unpeeled shrimp for $21, we would choose that $1 cheaper, more convenient bag of shrimp. Businesses are not actively fighting trafficking because consumers, you and I, are signaling to them that we don't care. That doesn't have to be true. Imagine a world where our lifestyle choices do not result in enslavement of people. People like Jing, like us, simply want to own a clothing store, send their kids to the best schools, give or take chances that they or their parents didn't have. These people have a beautiful spirit within them to survive, to thrive. The hands that harvested and prepared your coffee, made the phones that help you connect to the world, sewed every button and zipper on the clothes that you wear today. These hands have faces eager for adventure and a better future. We created this culture, and I believe that enslavement of people with our daily lifestyle choices is not what we have intended for ourselves or this world. We can be agents of change or agents of status quo. The choice is ours. I invite you. I hope that we will choose to do something courageous and bold, ending slavery. So next time, you enjoy your food, your favorite clothes, the goods and services that have just become part of your life, will you ask, how did it get here? Thank you.